I'd been hauling furniture for about 2 years. I started right after my folks kicked me out. It was a mind-numbing and tiring gig, but it brought food on the table and kept a roof over my head, so I didn't think about it much. Most people were either invisible or way too chatty. I'd seen 100 living rooms and figured I knew the drill. Until the delivery to Route 49 came. An old lady named Agnes had ordered a custom-made 3-legged table. The address was way out past the edge of town on a country road. Throughout the drive, my GPS kept glitching, but it had happened before on some older routes, so I kept driving. The house was 2 stories, wood construction, and seemed to have been built in the 80s. The porch steps shifted under my boots when I carried the table up. The door opened before I'd even finished knocking. The lady was small and somewhere in her 60s. Her white hair was worn loose around her shoulders, and she was wearing this faded, oversized tunic that looked like it had seen better days. She spotted the table and her face lit up. She gestured for me to haul it into the parlor. I stepped inside and immediately felt like I'd walked into the wrong century. The room was packed, wall to wall. Clusters of little voodoo dolls were pinned everywhere, mixed in with strings of small animal bones. Someone had drawn weird chalky symbols along the baseboards that didn't look like anything I recognized. Every flat surface was covered in candles. The whole place reeked of stale beeswax and damp earth. I dropped the table exactly where she pointed. She laid her hands flat on the wood, closed her eyes, and gave a slow nod, like the table was talking back to her. She told me it was a planchette table, that she was a medium, and that she used these tables to help people communicate with the dead. I should have just taken my invoice and bounced. I had 2 more stops to make and the sun was already way past noon. But Liam's face dangled in my eyes. It had been nearly a month since the crash took him. We'd been best friends since our sophomore year, and a day hadn't gone by when I hadn't missed him. So I heard myself ask her if she could reach him. She happily agreed. She asked me to light all the candles around us. She set 2 chairs at the table, placed the planchette on the surface between us, and told me to put my fingers on it lightly and not to take them off regardless of what happened. I watched her close her eyes and start whispering. At first, everything felt completely normal. I was even grimacing inside that I fell for it. Nobody could talk to the dead. But after 5 minutes, the temperature started dropping to the point where I got shivers. Every candle in that room tilted sideways at the same time, but there wasn't a lick of wind. Agnes went completely vacant. Her breathing slowed. Her hands turned white where they gripped the planchette, and her head slumped forward like somebody had cut her strings. I'd nearly got up and booked out of the room when she started giggling. My blood turned to ice. She started rambling incoherently. Before I knew it, Liam was there. He was chanting my name. The voice was unmistakably his, but the words coming out weren't. It was poisonous and angry. He started sobbing, accusing me of being a wuss for a friend. He said I'd watched him die, that I was right there on the shoulder of the road when the car flipped and didn't do anything to save him. I wasn't, though. I was dead to the world in my apartment 3 miles away. The cops verified it. I had the receipt from the diner, but hearing his voice say it crawled doubt in my own skin. Agnes's face started twitching, muscles pulling in directions that weren't meant to go. When her eyes finally snapped open, angry tears rolled down her white pupils. The voice growled and shouted as Agnes convulsed. Things started falling off the shelves. A heavy mason jar shattered against the drywall inches from my ear, showering me in glass. The tables started bucking like a live thing, rattling so hard the planchette went flying across the floor and cracked against the baseboard. All of a sudden, she stood up, drifted upright, and started coming at me. I screamed, kicked my chair over, and scrambled through the hall. I didn't stop until I was locked in the cab of my truck with the engine screaming. I drove for 20 minutes before I realized my hands were shaking too hard to stay in the lane. I had to pull over at a gas station to keep from barfing. A week later, I was scrolling through the news when her face stopped my thumb. Agnes was found dead in that same parlor. The report called it a violent struggle. Towards the end, the table was mentioned. It was found snapped clean in half, The candles had burned circles into the floorboards. I came real close to calling 911 to spill everything, but I stopped. What was I going to tell them? That some creepy table told me I was a killer? They'd toss me in a psych ward before I even got to an interrogation room. But whenever I close my eyes now, I still see those eyes and feel the burn of those jars shattering. I can still hear Liam, too, calling me a shitty friend. I find myself replaying the whole night over and over. I check the clock on my stove, the time-stamped texts from that night when I was home. I know I was. But then, why's Liam's angry voice silencing my truth?